Welcome to Euphoria. Reminder, if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe button. Smash that like. Also follow me and Caedrel on Twitter. I don't actually know what it does for us. Like maybe someday we can sell out completely, but then when the number goes up, I feel good. It's that little endorphin
It's satisfying.
boost. So at Daniel Drakos, at Caedrel.
Yeah, the boys.
The boys. This is season 7, episode 11. As always, we are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. It's a packed episode today, folks. We had a crazy weekend of game, and coming up on this episode, we're going to talk to Odoamne about his series versus Mad, as well as get his thoughts on the state of the League of Legends meta at the moment. We're going to preview the matches coming up next week and get Upset's thought on his year, his upcoming match versus Schalke, his career, his everything. But to kick things off, we have to talk a little bit about the games that happened last week. And I want to start by talking about Fnatic SK. Caedrel, we had the pleasure of casting the series alongside Ender, who isn't here today. I miss him. You know, without
so much empty
without
space
the plastic prison, it's just not the same.
No,
you know,
we let him go. We let him free.
Go. You gotta, if you love him, you gotta let him go.
Yeah,
you know
true.
what I mean?
It's like the Pokemon where the Ash lets for your Butterfree. Do you remember that scene?
Oh my god, it's so sad, bro. That's the second saddest scene next to the Charmander scene.
Oh man. And the Pikachu scene in the first movie where
there's
he's crying,
a lot of sad scenes,
and he's like turned stone.
Oh
that
no, I
really
forgot
sad.
about that one. Yo, spoilers. If you haven't seen Pokemon, it gets gets emotional. You know, almost as much as Shrek 2 for me. I cry every time at that movie, but that's a story for a different time. Fnatic versus SK is a League of Legends series that happened. Last week we were very confident in predicting the 9-0 weekend.
Ender was convinced.
Ender was convinced of the 9-0 weekend. That said, the 9-0 weekend was not completely, we didn't have a single 3-0. So
no, we didn't.
We were completely wrong.
3-2.
3, yeah. So here we are. Fnatic versus SK. Expectations versus reality. Expectations 3-0. Fnatic stronger team overall. Treats was the strong point for this team. How would they possibly get Treats to work against Hylissang Upset? And then when we saw the series, Treats definitely had his moments. Overall, I think a very bloody, very scrappy series, but we got to call out the man of the hour in this series. While Fnatic did win, Gen X was the man.
It was a bit of a Gen X gap, but Bwipo was on tanks every single game, so he couldn't have the actual impact. So Gen X was the one pulling out the carries. And you might just think like, oh, the Urgot game. Wow, he was so good. That's what I'm thinking of recently. But then he had the Na game where he pretty much solo carried them to a win. And then he had the Aatrox game where he was the only one actually being able to do things. But I think this, in terms of expectations, you would think, oh, this is going to be a 3-0. Fnatic's looking like better form. They have the strongest bot lane in the league almost, and top 2 bot lane in the league. And SK is playing through bot all the time. So you expect, well, they're just going to smash them in bot, and then SK is going to have no win conditions. But then Gen X steps up, and then it felt like there was a series on our hands. But my gut feeling tells me that if Fnatic didn't throw that game to 10,000 gold lead, Azir, Zyra, Khan, and they actually stapled that game in, quick, clean ending that I think they could have done, then I think it would have been a 3-0.
I think this was definitely our most one-sided series, I would say. Because even Rogue Mad, although that series didn't go to expectations, and we'll talk to Odo about it later, I think this was probably our most one-sided series, because you're right. That was, well, absolute credit to SK for finding the miracle comeback. Yeah. It was like, and I don't want to hark on this guy too much, but Blue had a trash series, right? That is what it is. We can't jump around it. Like, I hope for he gets another chance. I hope SK continues to give him a chance. I don't think you should take a player down because of one series, but at the same time, I'm not going to beat around the bush. That was not a good series. Yeah, for Blue.
To be completely honest, I feel like Blue was never really in it, and he really was not showing up at all. And Tinks, to me as well, was kind of
pretty invisible.
Invisible is the good word. I was not going to say underwhelming, but I felt like he was not making mistakes, but he wasn't really doing anything either. He was just power farming, and then plays were happening around the map, and he was just responding to them every now and then. And every play of his, like level 3 ganking mid, almost dying in first game to the Volibear flash, it just felt like every play was getting countered by self-made in mid lane. So to me, since Fnatic threw that game, it really felt like it was going to be a 3-0. I think it would have been a clean 3-0, but the fact that SK won that game, I feel like they got like a breath of fresh air when the series was 1-1. Yeah. And then they should have won, I think, the game where it was just Niski and Upset left to defend the base, 2 versus 4, 2 versus 5, and then they all got ace, lost Baron, lost Elder, lost Soul, or whatever it was, and then the game was over. So I feel like it could have been a 5-game series.
Yeah.
But that game, if they didn't overchase and then just took a reset and then went to the Elder Drake or the Baron, and they set up again, they probably would have won that. I remember talking to Treats backstage, and he's like, I don't know why the hell we tried it.
I also think that there's an argument that if they played a little bit better on the Force, they maybe could have ended there too. Because it it was one of those really awkward situations where it felt to me, at least as an outsider, you could see that the team wasn't all on the same page. Like, despite the fact that they were all in the same area, like different people were different closer or further away from the tier. You could tell that they were sweating a little bit in that moment. That's what it looked like on the outside.
Yeah, and it's those kind of moments where it's like you question your amount of time, because there's so many factors when it comes to the word. This single sentence, "Can we end?" has so many meanings behind it. It's like, okay, so they have 40 seconds to respawn, and we're on their tier 3, let's say.
Yeah,
we probably can end, but then you have to take into account your champions, tower damage, the enemy champions, how long can they stall, wave clear, where's your wave? There's like loads of things to think about. And I feel like the only thing SK missed was just zoning them off the wave, which they didn't do too well. And then they all got chunked out.
Well, they had TP in that play too, so they like really wanted to get desperate for the end. They could have TP'd to a minion to keep a minion alive, keep the bonus subs.
I think that Fnatic was sloppy in that series. It was our most one-sided series, I must say. I think Fnatic were sloppy. I think there's a lot of things to take away from this, especially their mid to late game of like how they threw these leads. Like I remember the game that they lost, they were 10k up, and then the game that they almost lost, I think Upset was like 7-0 coming out of lane phase, and you're struggling already. So I think there's 3 things to take away from that series for Fnatic. One, is this tank top Bwipo style working for us? When I think Bwipo's been one of their best players or standout performance, especially when Niski is more of a supportive role.
Yeah.
Number 2 is we need to fix our mid to late game macro in a sense. And number 3, how do we snowball faster through bot, through whether it's the draft issue or whether it's just like, is our map movements just poor?
Yeah, and a final note on SK, like big shout out to Gen X, big shout out to Streets. They were clutch in that series. I'm really excited to see what they do. The rest of the members obviously had their moments in the series while it was rough for Blue and Tanks. Jezu had a few moments, and curious to see if SK can evolve because they've been a team that's consistently made playoffs and then consistently essentially been knocked out in the exact fashion that we saw in this series versus Fnatic. But I think you're completely right. Now, one of the nice things, we get to talk to Upset today as well, but they also talked to Upset in PGL and talked to Bwipo at the end of the day, and we kind of heard from Fnatic. And over aggression, the big issue. He feels like, they talked a lot about how confident they are in their individual players, how confident they are in their kind of fight heavy, kind of scrappy style. It's just once they win a fight or once they get a lead, why do they keep fighting? And even Upset said, like, I wish I could tell you.
I remember seeing that. It was like, I don't know actually either.
And that's I think really difficult, especially when you start to look ahead at Fnatic's schedule. But overall, I think one thing that Upset did say that I really liked in the post game lobby was essentially part of the reason that he was able to shine so much in the series, because Upset really did have a fantastic series, was because Bwipo was tanking so much pressure. You know what I mean?
He was.
Bwipo was the role player for the team. He took a step back. He said, hey, let's let Upset carry. He played the way more defensive options. And overall, I think if you want to, you could probably try to keep doing that against Schalke. I think it's something we'll talk about more when we look ahead to next week's game. But what I'll say is that if you are a Fnatic fan and you're scared and you're nervous for them, I think that's fair, but don't be too scared. I think there's a lot of positives to take away from this series. But if you have 100% confidence, also don't have that. That's also crazy.
I think the best things, if you're a Fnatic fan, to take away from that series was Selfmade is kind of back. Like, Selfmade had a great series. He was everywhere, making plays happen. Every neutral objective was his. Fnatic's bot lane was showing up, and Bwipo showing his flexibility from, like, I remember when Bwipo first joined Fnatic, he was on tank duty alongside Soaz when they were sharing the spot. 2018, I think it was.
Yeah, and Bwipo talked about that. Like, that's what he wanted to be. He wanted to be the guy who kind of, when Soaz wanted to be the more divisive guy who'd play more different things, he wanted to be the opposite of that. He wanted to be the opposite to whatever Soaz was, so he had a different niche in the team, and now he can kind of do whatever.
Do you know what I love the most about Fnatic? It's like, I think I saw it on Twitter. Someone tweeted from the LEC, I don't know if it was you or Ender or someone, about Hylissang having so many deaths or 100 deaths. I don't know what number it was. And Hylissang just tweets, that's the only stat I care about. So he only loves to like go in and die. He cares about how many deaths he can get in the game, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. But that's just how Hylissang works. It works for him.
99 deaths, I think, heading into the series just from the regular season, which for context is an insanely high
he's
number.
Like way further ahead than anyone else, right?
Beyond nuts. In 18 games to be at 99 deaths is like, and I think the person right behind him, I think, was Mickey X. So for context, like, most of the good supports in our league have a lot of deaths. Not that you should be dying if you are a support player in solo queue. That is not what I'm trying to tell you. Just that there's a lot of risk takers. And Mickey was like at least 20 or 30 deaths below Hylissang. So Hylissang, he is the king of death.
But every single one of his deaths is worth it, I'm sure of it.
Him and Death are best friends. Like, he high-fives him on the way to the graves. He's like, back for another one, Hylissang. He's like, it.
He's like, you're holding the wave again, weren't you? Yeah, but I got the freeze. How long did you stop that basis for? Well, about 30 seconds. And you're in dead? Oh, it's worth it though, right? Oh, Hylissang, dude, I love that guy.
Oh, he's a character, dude. I mean, I love it. Yeah, it depends. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who have mixed feelings about that play style, but I still have nothing but respect for Hylissang.
I think the coolest thing about the Fnatic bot lane to me is upsets. Upset supports have been like up and down throughout the last few years. I think it was like peaks of like Ignar really popping off, and then all of a sudden Upset and Ignar kind of fell off a little bit, and then
go ahead.
Now Upset has like arguably the best performing support from Worlds last year from Europe.
Yep.
Next to his side. I think it's just been fantastic.
I think the problem that I see for the longest time is that, like, one, there were splits where he just didn't have a great support. Like, I think the Destiny split was rough, and it's hard to say if that's like something between the two of them or if that's just Destiny underperforming generally, although Destiny certainly had his moments on the Nautilus. But yeah, even Ignar, as good as he was at like the hook champions and the playmakers, also had these big faults. Mm-hmm. And now it feels like he finally gets to play with the support who can do it all. Now, admittedly, most of what Hylissang does right now is just play really aggressive, but that is really exciting to see how that has unleashed Upset, because this was, remember, like, expectations for him, and again, we're going to talk to him about this later, was he needed to step up this split. Because essentially at a certain point, it's like, well, you've been on good rosters, you've been to finals a few times, overall kind of middling results compared to the other top 80 carries is, at a certain point, we had to believe it was an Upset problem. But the way that he stepped up with a good team surrounding him this season kind of cast that thought away.
Yeah, definitely.
Our next series, though, Schalke versus G2. This was supposed to be the closest series. In true G2 fashion, it was absolutely not. What's your take? Why was this series so close? Like, what's your take on this series? Because I've heard a lot of different versions. There's the, wow, Schalke got way better. There's the, wow, G2 underperformed. Like, what's your version of the events?
So the first two games, it felt like G2 were in full control. Honestly, from the draft, from the start of the game, the whole thing was just G2 favorite, I really felt like. Even the Darius pick came out, I believe they were easily dealing with that. There was no problemo. And then you saw towards the end of game 2, they were having a lot of fun. Like the Sion drifts around the map. They get into the third game, they miss a ban, and everyone's just laughing their ass off.
Yeah.
And then slowly, like, you gave them a first pick, Hecarim, and now you gave them Hecarim Orianna, and now you're picking Sivir into Jinx, and you're playing TF Sion against the Darius. So all of a sudden, I look at the game 3 draft, I was watching the draft, and I was casting them, and I was like, what the hell are they doing? Like, what is this draft? This is awful. And then you got into the game, and you could see they literally could not do anything. There was no damage. Your only damage was a Sivir, and your TF was behind, Lilia's behind, and you're against the Darius. So that game 3, I'll accept it. That was just kind of lost in draft in a way, in my perspective. And then game 4, you get to game 4, and it's like Jankos has Smite, loses Baron to Abadage, and then they're taking away dragons with Jinx rockets, and it felt like there was something shining down on Schalke that game where they won every single Smite fight in the world without Smite. And then game 5, the reason this whole game was close because G2 just dove them on their tier 2 5-man, got aced, gave Jinx a triple kill, and then got Baron. So as much as I want to say Schalke played well, I think the best thing Schalke did in this series was the adaptation as the series progressed. I think their drafts got a lot better. Yeah. They realized what was broken. They stuck to their guns, right? I think a lot of teams would pick like the Darius into Sion and then think like, oh, we lost the game. We're not going to play it anymore. But they played it. They carried on playing it and it worked. So.
And I think one of the things that's really cool about watching Schalke play is that so often games are broken open against G2 on individual skill levels, and it did feel like for the most part Schalke were able to match, and especially Abadage. I was really, because the question I remember around Abadage for the longest time when he was Faker Dage last season was, can he still show up on stage in these big high pressure moments? And he did in this series. I think he was a really solid contributor, never really fell behind the Caps, won the early lane phase, Azir versus Lucian, pressured Caps out. Like watching in that game 5 when Abadage got that first push and took Caps to like no health and forced him to TP back to lane, I was like, this game is over.
But then he doesn't TP back.
Yeah, but then like he stayed for too long and it all went to shit. Yeah, but like in that 2-minute moment where I got to look at Abadage and go, well, he just won lane when he absolutely should not have won lane. Like that was like, let's go Schalke.
I think you're right. I think Schalke actually had a lot of glimmers of hope, actually, now that I think about it. The early games especially, they were winning every early game.
Limit was cracked
out of his mind. Everyone stepped up. It felt like Neon was the hyper carry that they needed. Abadage stepped up in lane. Gilius' early games were a lot better than the regular season. Yeah. I think these early games, especially in game 4 on the Udyr into Lilia, that was a really, really good early game. And then Broken Blade, I mean, the man got a pentakill on Darius. He was 1v3ing people.
This Darius tech is nuts, dude. I thought for sure it was griefing. I didn't know about Adam in the LFL, but apparently this has like been a long time coming, and Adam is like the Giga Smurf top lane prodigy.
I think the two biggest things you have to note about Darius, first of all, if you pick it in Sion, you win the lane.
For sure.
Second of all, you can actually hook his Q charge, right? So if you ever try to get knocked up, you just hook him and just one-shot him.
Also, Darius is, if you for whatever reason, haven't played against Darius, maybe because you ban it in solo queue or you're in a high enough ELO where generally people stop playing this pick, which is surprising because Ghost Flash Darius is like one of the greatest solo queue cheeses of all time.
Oh, it's in Challenger, trust me.
Darius passive is the most nutso broken shit in the game.
He gets cracked out after 5 stacks.
Level 1, he gets 40 AD off his passive if he gets 5 stacks. So if you're Scion in the front, you're like, I don't really care if Darius gets an extra 260 AD at level 18. Like, yeah, of course you don't. But when he flash autos your AD carry for half their health and immediately ults them when he has passive fully stacked, like, you start to care very fast.
It's the flash auto W ult. Dead. Yeah. No, Schalke. After game 2, I thought they were done, so I'll be honest.
Yep.
I felt like everything they tried failed, but they stuck to it. They did a really good draft. They adapted well, and I think that every single member kind of stepped up. Obviously, I think some members stepped up more than others. I think Limit, for me, was the deciding factor in the series.
For sure.
Because he roamed to mid, helped Abdalga a lot, helped Gilius, and then wasn't around Neon too much. And then Broken Blade as well. I think Broken Blade and Limit were performing the best. But yeah, Fnatic Schalke is going to be an interesting one.
Fnatic Schalke is going to be crazy. And I think we talked about it a little bit about it on the desk, but like Limit as the biggest asset for the team, it's going to be a very different. He was given a lot of freedom to roam. And I don't know if he's going to get that same freedom versus Upset Hylissang. We'll check in on that later. Of course, we also heard from Mad Lions afterwards talking about G2 and kind of anticipation of their series that they felt like G2 were playing at 50% strength. And while like I don't really have a number. I think you could put a random percent number to it. I will say that I would expect G2 to come in with a stronger read on the meta, a stronger understanding of what is good and bad after this week. And you can see that as great and as good as G2 are as a team, still number 1 in our league, their prep is not infallible. They will still make mistakes, and you can chalk that up to, trolling and draft and having a good time and, banning nothing or whatever. But in my eyes, they maybe just didn't know 100% what was the best, which I think is fair for any team coming into this first week of playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the interesting thing, because if you look at the teams as a whole, you look at, for example, let's take G2, Fnatic, and Rogue, okay?
Yeah.
Wunder was on tank duty, Bwipo was on tank duty, and Odoamne was sort of on tank duty, right? He had Jace Aatrox, but he had half the Sion games. Whereas you look at the other teams, like Mad Lions, you saw Armut playing things like the Wukong. So he was playing really aggressive. Genax was playing like Urgot and Jace. So you can see the difference in teams. I don't know if that's because of the scrims or you can kind of see who they're scrimming. And even Schalke with the Darius. So you've got 3 teams who are playing tank top, which are arguably the best teams in Europe after the regular split. Yep. Then you've got the 3 other teams who were like 4th, 5th, and 6th, who are just playing carry tops, triple threat competitions. And then you look at the results and you're thinking like, Mad beat Rogue, Schalke almost beat G2, and SK were kind of matching Fnatic. So you question yourself, are they just reading the meta better? And with those 3 having scrims against each other, whereas G2, Fnatic, Rogue, which you would expect, were just scrimming each other because they're the best team, so you may as well get the best scrim partners. And they found that weak side top was just the best play. So I think the meta is just interesting looking at the playoffs round 1. Round 2 will be even more interesting, I think, because then we'll see how teams adapt. So which one was the better one? Is blind pick Sion really the way forward? Is it better to just try and get a better top matchup, ban some top laners, and blind pick something like Urgot?
Yeah, and I think I'm of the opinion this meta is kind of trash. I honestly just think it's trash. But we'll talk to Odo about it because I want to get his thoughts as well.
Is it Azir Corki as well?
No, it's just like Orianna mid and speed junglers, and everything else is kind of bad mid jungle. And that's it. Like every other chain. Like for the record, is Orianna's 6-1 is a preview to that discussion.
Dude, I love Formula 1, dude.
Bro, it started. You can watch Formula 1, then you can watch LEC,
and then you got Hacker.
Hey, let's go. I only know anything about Formula 1 because you made me watch that series, but it was a banger. So
let's go.
It's an absolute banger.
You also watch it.
It's on Netflix. What's it called, actually?
Drive to Survive.
Drive to Survive. It's sick. I do not care about racing. I am not a gearhead in any sense, but it is a very well-made series. So, yeah, if you are keen at all to learn about Formula 1, it is a fantastic documentary.
Recommend.
That said, let's get Odo in here. Let's talk about the last series on our list, Rogue versus Mad. We're wondering what happened, and who better to tell us what the hell happened in that series than the man in the top lane himself.
Man, myth, the legend.
It's now my distinct pleasure to welcome none other than the weak side king, Odoamne. First question, how do you feel about that name? We coined it pretty early on. Do you like the weak side king? Do you want like a king-based title where pretty much everything we've figured out in LEC has to be royalty-based? Do you want to be like the side lane emperor? Like what kind of title are you looking for here, Odo?
I mean, the king thing is we always meme it, because like whenever I listen to you guys cast, well, at least a couple of seasons ago, and then I hear the old kings, new kings and stuff, and I'm
yeah.
You guys have some resurgence every once in a while of those like narratives, and I'm like, oh, here come the narratives. And now that, because like I've been with you guys so long that whenever I hear it, I know like it's the narrative meta where you guys talk about the narrative for like 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, it's the narrative part of the cast, and then we have the normal part of the cast, so now when I get weak side king, I'm kind of cringing a bit inside, but not because it's a bad title, but I just know it's like in part of that narrative meta, Yeah. But in the office, the meme is that I'm the weak side machine, So
okay.
You guys are not that off,
Yeah, no, but it's funny how it's gone from King's Legacy to this split. Larson was called the Ginger God, so now we're getting into some kind of
the deities.
We have to keep demigods, gods. We've got machines, robots.
And to be fair, like it was definitely the old Kings, new Kings dynasty legacy split was a bit grief, but like sometimes I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I like that was rough. Like we definitely like that split. I think it's fair for people to be like, all right, y'all took it too far, and now we just have to live with that, right? Because like this season, I don't think it's too much. But definitely everyone's like, the second we do anything, they're like, I swear to God, if you say legacy or dynasty, I'm muting the stream. I'm like, all right. Well, just one. Weak side king. Just one. Just let me get one in. I need it. You got to understand, for the people out there who don't watch every game, we need something simple that they can grab onto. That's why we do it. For the diehard fans, they're going to be like, guys, why are you saying this? Like, you don't G2 keep winning. You don't need to call them the Kings anymore. But for Joe Schmo, who doesn't know who Odoamne is, we're like, we could say he's really good at side laning, and maybe they'll understand what that means. Or we can call him the weak side king. And then when his friends go, why do you like Odoamne? They go, because he's the weak side king. Branding.
Now we should call him the weak side machine.
Yeah. Because you're just a robot.
I mean, weak side machine is weak side machine is a bit more fitting. But yeah, I mean, compared to the previous seasons, the narrative part is not exceedingly long anymore. Like I identify it, and we can both move on quite fast and just enjoy the rest of the cast. So
it's not there for you, Mr. Pro Player. It's there.
But sometimes
you get fans.
Sometimes you guys would start like in seasons past, it would start at game 1, and then the narrative part would end by like game 4, and then game 5 was G2 Fnatic, and then the narratives were like cast aside,
I think, I'd like to think we found a balance where we remind people the stakes, the history. Like when you and Jankos play each other, we'll be like, these guys were on a team for so many years. Brother, killing brother. Like we'll get that narrative in there for sure. But then we'll talk about the game, you know what I mean? But like, it's good. You got to set the context for the people, man. That said, Mr. Weakside Machine, were you the Weakside Machine this week versus Mad Lions? What happened? You already talked about how the series this week were a little bit crazy when we were off air. You talked a little bit how everyone was all over the place. But what happened to Rogue in this series versus Mad Lions?
I would like to think that I was kind of Weakside Machine first 3 games. Game 4, I kind of joined in on the Fiesta alongside the rest of my crew. But I feel like first 3 games, my performance is quite respectable, at least in terms of like laning stats, because now that's the narrative around me, like stats are good for me.
But to be clear, like at some point, it's just analysis, because like those numbers don't lie. Those numbers don't lie, and they do mean something. We're gonna at some point we need to draw the line. I'm gonna be like, Odo is very good at side laning. He manages his waves really well, and you're gonna be like, this guy with his narrative coming in talking about wave management. What a story.
No, but I mean for sure. I think game 3, I played lane. I mean game 1, 2, and 3, I played kind of lane really well in all those 3 games. Even game 4. What I did in game where like I died to the gank, I even told my team it's a good death, on the spirit of Babus.
The boss.
Because I mean, that doesn't really matter, because I mean, I kind of saw it coming, but I was kind of locked in my Q animation, and he just deflashed, so I could not like dodge it. But then I was like, okay, whatever, he blue flash, lane is still fine. I managed to push out, and then I'm a Sion, so it doesn't really care. I just tanked the gank. But then, I joined in on the Fiesta. But overall, I feel like, it was kind of like a crazy series because even though we scrimmed on stage, part of like, tech check, to make sure everything's fine with broadcast, the PCs and all of this, we didn't really like encounter the issues we had on stage against Mad. And we kind of like identified what it is, because, you could say it's like choking, everyone kind of chokes in their own way. It's like the choke, where you kind of forget how to play League of Legends. There's this choke where you're like, okay, I can't trade here because what if the enemy jungler is here? There's the choke where you're just like ultra quiet and you don't say anything and everyone's thinking, what the is happening, And there's also the choke where you're just floating comms to like exceeding amounts of like level, where you're just like you have to use kind of like your whole brain power to just filter out the useful from the useless information, and that's kind of like I think what happened to us, where like early game was like early up to like start of mid game was like fine in all 4 games. I feel like we were just winning lanes pretty much all the time, maybe except game 2 where bot was kind of trading solo bolos with each other.
Single dingles.
But yeah, single dingles. But I don't know, I feel like come mid game when it came all about like teamwork, there wasn't really like this level of communication that was like always there in our games, where we're just kind of have like time to think, and we're kind of like relatively calm, and we can easily decide what we want to do together. I just felt like it got to a point where comms just got like flooded with a lot of like useless information, and instead of just like making one team-based call, everyone was just kind of like suggesting more than we needed to do, because like game 4, once we got our Aphelios to be 1 million kills, and I wasn't going on the end train yet. I feel like the game was really free, given it like how many drakes and how easy it would have been for our comp to hold control of like all the chokes and stuff. And I feel like it's kind of like the story of all games, where going into next week we just kind of need to figure out how to stop the comms from flooding, because I feel like it's kind of like the same story as we had in all our losses so far this split, that we're just our biggest enemy, because I always felt like that all the losses we had so far were just like us shooting ourselves in the foot, instead of like being a skill gap, even like the losses against G2 in regular season. And I feel like all these 3 losses against Mad Lions were just us playing really bad, and it's not like getting skill gapped, it's just like anomalies, happening, so it's kind of like it was kind of like a new scenario, like a new situation for everyone in game, that it's kind of this like it's panic inducing in a way, where you're just like always used to having this environment, and then it suddenly changes, and then you kind of have to adapt in a high pressure situation to kind of try and get back to like that level of stability that you had before.
That's of all of the things that I thought would like potentially plague your team in playoffs, I wrote like for every team we brought up the talking point, like how much does stage affect performance, right? Because it's a valid question. It's been so long since anyone has played on stage, even a G2, a team full of veterans. We were still wondering how much it would affect them, but Rogue was not really on the list of teams that we expected at least to be affected by the stage. I'm very surprised to hear that that's kind of what happened, and that's also to me super rough of a problem to try to fix mid playoffs, because you don't really get a chance to replicate that stage situation until next week, until next Sunday, when you play an elimination best of 5. Like, how do you guys actually approach practice now this week to kind of course correct and clean up comms? Because if in scrims the comms are fine, like how do you actually recreate that scenario to actually fix those problems and get that practice in?
I'm personally not so worried about it, because in the grand scheme of things, you lost the chance to lose and stay in the tournament. And it's like pretty much just one extra BO5 that we have to play, because if we win against Fnatic or SO4, then we're back to playing against, let's say, Mad, and we're back to where we started, And then if you win, you play against G2, which would have happened if you would have won against Mad. And all of a sudden, you're just lagging one best of 5 behind. So I'm not really too concerned, that we lost. I feel like this loss was a good loss for us, because I feel like given how our performances have been in Spring Split, how scrims have been going and stuff, a loss like this is kind of a good shake-up, because it brings you aware to issues that you did not know were there before. And even though, you would say this like a stage issue, the fact that the awareness of it has been brought up to this issue, and now that, okay, even if we're not playing on stage, we're going to scrim this week, and we know this is the problem that's been like happening, on stage. I feel like the fact that we know what the problem is, it makes it a lot easier to fix, even though you don't have the environment, we're not scrimming on stage. We can't really replicate that high pressure situation that made the problem be there in the first place. I feel like just because we know what it is, we can like find situations for it. Like, for example, say we can focus on scrims this week. We can filter out useful information from like useless, because even though in scrims, even if there's no like stress or anything, there's still to some extent a level of useless information being like, you know, spammed out in comms, you know, like, oh, this guy is boosted, or oh, this guy is losing, you know, stuff like this. You know, you're not really talking about waves, you know, like let's make this happen on this wave and stuff, because, you know, if you have something as basic as that, then even when you start flooding comms, say you start flooding comms again, you kind of flood it with good information, you know. And we can maybe even look to distribute roles to some extent, you know, to who we know is kind of like emptying comms. We can like, I mean, this is a joke, but you can just like just ban him from talking, you know. I mean, it might be a band-aid, you know. Yeah, just mute him, like, you know, just don't let him bring chaos into your team, you know. But I mean, we need to try, you know. We have 4 days, I think 4 or 5 days of scrims, and I feel like as I said, this loss was a good loss for us, because when you win too much, you kind of need someone to kick you in the ass, you know, to kind of say, okay, you're not there yet. You still have a lot of work to figure out, you know. And I mean, I think it's gonna piss a lot of people off, but I don't really mind, because there's a lot of people getting pissed off about everything. But I feel like no one from my team thought that Mad was like better than us, you know, while we were playing, because we were playing and we were like, oh my god, these guys are just, you know, worse than us, or they're just like sweating just as much as we are, you know, because we knew we were like something was off with our game, but we also knew that something was off with their game, you know. So I feel like if we manage to tackle our issues and we go into rematch, it's gonna be kind of like what everyone predicted, you know, because I felt like in terms of skill, it was not even close, you know. But it's just like these issues that we were like facing, and they were probably facing as well, you know, but to a lesser degree than us. Just kind of made it that it was 3 stomps like that, I guess.
Yeah, I think you could see it from the outside, especially on game 4, where it's like you have a 6,000 gold lead, you have all the Drakes almost, and then
oh my god,
everyone
Aphelios is giga fed. I love watching Aphelios in pro play. I was like cracked. I was like, they're inching. He's got 20 shurikens. Why are they fighting Hans? And he's just murdering everyone.
But then it was like people getting caught. You could see the game wasn't progressing in a way, and then I guess this all comes down to over communication, right? Which I think I've experienced over communication as well personally. It's like people are just saying way too many things. There's way too much shit being thrown around that actually doesn't need to be said. And if they just focus on one thing together and everyone comes up with the same kind of, everyone just agrees on the same plan, or one person directing the comms, it just makes it so much easier. But I think it's a problem which is fixable in a way where it's like, I think Odoamne is right. Just someone needs to talk a lot less, you talk a lot less, and then let us do lots of talking, take a lot of the brunt of the plans and stuff.
Reason number like 3 million why I could never be a pro player. Because the only thing I want to say in comms is like, let's get this guy. To censor myself a little bit, like, let's mess this dude up, let's mess that dude up. Like, this guy's griefing, this guy's inting. Oh, sorry guys, I ran it. Like, I don't want to say like wave state. That sounds like, god damn, dude. It's like I'm reminded all the time that it's a job. I'm like, please let me just talk shit in comms. I just want to be a dick.
Yeah, it doesn't really work, because you can go into a middle of the fight and say, fight, go.
I've do it with Drakos.
That's what it is. If there's ever like a CSGO equivalent coaching position, I just want to coach a team for one day so I could be like, Gaia! What is this griefer doing? Get him! You know, like
just directing.
I get fired after one day.
Doing that?
I mean, I'm not typing it, but I'm saying it. Yeah. Brian, no, what am I typing?
That sounds like a good time.
Let me know. Hit me up, bro. I'll grief you in normals, but we're gonna have a great time. That's all I'm saying. And also Riot Games is listening. In which case, I say nothing. In comms, I am as wholesome as I am. In text chat, I say GG, have fun. Everyone, you're doing great. Sorry about the underperformance there. You know,
gotta follow the summoners.
It's just a rough game for you over there, buddy. That's how I communicate. Last thing I'd love to get your thoughts on, Odo. How do you feel about this meta right now? Because I look at the meta right. So I'm not a big fan, is what I'll say. I see Orianna, queen of the mid lane. No one comes close. That's my read on it. I see fast junglers, Volibear, Udyr, and Hecarim. And I see Sion, Gnar bans and then things that people play into Sion. Like, to me, it feels pretty stagnant. I'm curious what your read is. How much more variety do you think there is? How do you and kind of Rogue feel about the meta right now?
I mean, you're kind of accurate about the top lane part. I'm not so sure about jungle, if Volibear is that OP. But the part about top lane is right. You know, there's kind of like Sion and picks that people think are good into Sion, but are not really so good into Sion, you know? I mean, you can make an Aatrox work, you know? You can make, I don't know, what did
Darius.
we see? We saw Karma, I think, at one point. We see the Darius thing, which I'm not really convinced about it. I feel like it's just, you know, you're punishing the int in a way, but I feel like there's a point in the game where Sion is just pressing W and tanking 6 hits of your AD carry. So yeah, I mean, I feel like for top lane, the time it will get really spicy is when top is not really picked in first 3, and then if you take out Sion, then that's when you're having good times on top lane, where you're like, oh my god, they banned Sion, now we need to ban this, and then the other team is like, oh my god, they banned this, we need to ban that, and then you kind of go into this flowchart, you know, of making a pick OP for top, you know. And I think you kind of saw it versus Mad, you know, where all of a sudden it was Aatrox versus Wukong. And at one point, even like Urgot is picked, you know, if Sion is out, then Urgot becomes a blind pickable champion and stuff like this, you know. That's when you get a lot of fun stuff in the top lane. But I mean, for top lane, people are like, oh, he's just top lane, just pick him Sion, you know, just let him play and stuff like this. People don't really want to invest resources into top. They're like, you can play Sion. That's really good for you. You can do that. It's no problem. Just pick Sion.
And then the enemy team picks like Vayne, and it's like,
you don't need any bans for Sion. That's even better. Okay, let's ban 2 mids here and pick Sion, and then that's kind of like how it goes, you know. As for mid, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's becoming stale, you know, because it's also a couple of weeks on the same patch. People are just trying to figure out new things that work and stuff like this. So I feel like going into next week, maybe meta shakes up a bit. Maybe people start wanting to ban Sion, or they figure out something else for mid. Orianna gets taken off, or TF becomes higher prio and stuff like this. As for jungle, I'm not convinced about Volibear, because the reason why I feel like Volibear was OP before was that he was doing this Qmax thing, that he had 70% movement speed. But now I guess he has Chem Tank, so it's kind of the same thing. But I still feel like this champion will get out-tempoed or out-cleared by stuff like Udyr or Lilia. So I think if you dodge the level 3 gank, and you really need to be careful about the level 6 dive, because I feel like that's one thing that people forgot about Volibear, is that his dive is quite OP, just because you disable the tower and then you kind of have a free dive from 100 to 0 pretty much, you know? So I feel like if these things don't really happen, then he kind of gets out-tempoed by other junglers. So
yeah, I think we saw that in game 3 as well, with the Volibear just jumping over the wall, disabling the tower, and then your bot lane's just dead. There's no counterplay.
Yeah.
I think
that was not fun.
It is a good call out too, especially when we saw I think every single team that we've talked to or interviewed has basically said like, we weren't at 100%. You know what I mean? So I think that with every single team acknowledging that like teams were struggling with that first week back on stage, like that definitely feels like a time where Volibear would shine. You know, the champion that can just dive a tower, that can just point and click stun you. You know? Yeah,
I just think junglers right now are you either power farm, you're good at, and then you're good at starting early drakes, and you're good at early skirmishes, right? That's Hecarim Udyr in a nutshell. And then Volibear just comes into the context where his clear is slower, obviously, but his 1v1 is quite strong. He can easily do drakes, and he can go for early dives, right? So I think that's just the difference of trade-off versus I can scale and get to 6 versus Volibear wanting to dive your team and looking for level 3 ganks. And I mean, it's true if you respect it, then obviously the level 3 Volibear will fall off, which I think is one of the strongest junglers level 3. But there's also ways to be creative in finding your lanes, finding the dives or whatever it is. But yeah,
I'm so over Chem Tank, bro. I'm just so tired of like full tank Hackerim's one-shotting carries. Like, it's just, I do not need that shit in my life. I don't need it in solo queue. I don't need it on stage. Odo, as a final question before we let you go, I would love to get your thoughts kind of on the matches that are upcoming. The most important match, of course, for you, Schalke versus Fnatic. Who do you expect to win? Who do you expect to be facing on Sunday?
It's kind of hard because I feel like their trajectory as teams have been like quite different. I feel like Fnatic has been slumping a bit, but they kind of beat SK, but it wasn't really like super convincing because SK got a win in game 2 that should have never ever happened. I mean, I guess it's kind of like the same win we got, Mad Lions got against us in game 4. So I guess we're both bad. But Schalke surprised me because I feel like they, out of all teams, they kind of stepped up the most, I think, and their performance against G2 was pretty good. So it's hard to say. It's actually first time I think where I can't really pinpoint who's gonna win or like who's gonna be better in a best of 5 between Schalke and Fnatic. But for my boys back at home in Schalke, then I think Schalke is gonna take it, and we're gonna play Schalke the next time we play.
Narrative.
Odoamne
versus his old team.
That's what he wants. No more kids.
It's like you're
New
like
team versus old team.
You're the big boss as the current highest placed former Schalke member. It's Upset former Schalke member playing Schalke to see who gets the right to fight Odoamne for who is the last Schalke player standing. And that's how you make a narrative. Boom, ship it.
Now, it's actually a banger narrative. Actually, out of all the ones you guys did so far, this one is really creative, because it's like, it's like the stuff Redditors love, It's just so deep in the bullshit pool that everyone loves it,
Yeah, luckily me and Drakos are casting the game, so we'll push that narrative.
We'll bring it up. We're casting the game. All right.
It's great. I love it.
All right, Odo, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, dude. Good luck on this week in scrims. Excited to see how you guys kind of shape up coming into this week. And best of luck on Sunday. I assume you'll get to watch alongside us on Friday and Saturday, see who you'll
get to hear the
against.
Narratives.
You're going to get to hear the narratives firsthand.
I'm looking to see if you guys do the narratives. But let's see scrims. I'm confident and hopeful we can fix our issues and put up a better game on Sunday, and always a pleasure to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, man. Awesome. We'll get you in the studio sometime in the future. Otherwise, have a good week. Have a good set of practice, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks. See you guys.
Peace.
Always a pleasure to talk to Odoamne.
What a legend.
Dude's a riot.
The weak side machine.
We have such good guests today. I love both these boys. Excited to talk to Upset too in a few minutes. But before we do, I think we do need to talk about some of these matchups that both of our guests are not participating in. In this case, G2 versus Mad. Now, really interesting to hear from Odoamne. After this series that Mad play, it feels like people just like, in regular season, we're like Mad or the tier below, right? It was like G2. Below G2 by a decent margin was Rogue, based on what we saw in Best of 1. And then far below that was kind of the rest, Mad being at the top of that pile. Mm-hmm. But after the series, everyone was pretty much on the Mad hype train. Mad botlane really stepped up in the last series that they played. It was looking good. But Odo, I think, kind of cut that down a little bit. He said he feels like everyone is underperforming, let's say, and he feels like any other day, when he believes that he'll get to semifinals probably against Mad, he's going to smash them. But how good are Mad, Caedrel? How good are Mad really? Because this is obviously a big series and a big test, and we can say historically that Mad Lions did beat G2 in a best of 5. Game 5, Shadow popped off. Can Elyoya rise to the challenge? But there's like a lot of talking points here historically. I don't know how valid they are in this best of 5, but Elyoya is a beast. I don't expect any of the performance anxiety to be here in this series. I just straight up 5v5, assuming both teams are playing on form. What can Mad do here?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Mad's this team that we've been talking about the whole split, like you said, just one step behind. And we're always like, can Elyoya, can Armut go into shoes of Shadow Rome in regular season form? This team beating G2 in the best of 5, coming second place in summer split. So it's really hard to say because it always felt like Mad's a step behind. But just looking at them now, they look like they're on form. They're incredible. And I think the biggest thing that I attribute to their success is their meta read is flawless, I feel like. They're training this triple threat composition. They're making sure they counter pick top. They don't give a crap about the Sion pick really. And then they're having this Volibear jungle. Elyoya has been probably the best early game jungler in the regular season.
Well, in playoffs,
and now in playoffs as well with the Volibear. He's not here to farm. Yes, he did play Lily as well. And then their meta read's so good. You have like the hyper carries of Jinx, Kai'Sa, and Vayne, stuff like this, which I think not many teams are doing other than really Schalke was doing it. And I feel like there's this differences in meta where the top teams of G2, Rogue, Fnatic feel like the Sion blind pick's really strong. They think it's super OP. And then you have the teams like Mad and Schalke who don't really care about it. And then they just counterpick it. And then they just go for a triple threat composition. And I feel like if you look at Mad Lions, Rogue, I don't know how much I would attribute to Rogue playing badly in that, especially the game where the fourth game of Velos fed Inferno.
Fourth game was for sure rough.
I know that Odoamne said that they had a lot of cluttered communication. They were all over the place. If this was any other game, they probably would have just smashed them and they would outskill them anyway. And if you do look at the stats, raw numbers, Mad Lions was losing those lanes in general across the board It didn't stand out too much, but they were losing the lanes just statistically. So you could see that Rogue were pushing the advantage in lane phase itself. But yeah, Rogue, hectic communications, getting caught out a lot. But how much do you attribute that to Mad Lions being like, okay, let's try and catch this guy out. Let's take it one step at a time. We're Infernal Soul down. We're down 6k gold at 15 minutes. Most teams would just shut down. But then they take a step back and like, okay, let's just wait for them to int. Blunder number 1, blunder number 2. Take it step by step by step. So they were very, although yeah, that game was a stomp, they were very clinical in the way that they came back. It was very slow progression. It wasn't like, oh, Rogue threw a huge team fight, they got Baron, they're back in it. It was very, very clinical of catching people out, choosing the right fights, and then Armut ended up carrying the game on Urgot, in my opinion. I don't know where this form of Mad Lions has come from, honestly, because the whole split long, we didn't really rate them as a top team, but they did finish third.
They did finish third, but it did feel, I mean, the thing is, this regular season was so scrappy. Remember that it was Mad Lions who were winning so many games that they ultimately just kind of threw. Now, we look at the last time that Rogue and Mad played in the regular season. We looked at this a lot on the analyst desk on the day. This was a game where their composition was kind of booty, to be honest. It was like Ahri plus Lilia mid. It was just like maybe not the strongest scaling duo in terms of damage output against a very tanky enemy team, but they built a lead. They got an Ocean Soul, and ultimately they still lost a game. People will remember that as the game where Odoamne went down to like 6 health and then back to full. Hashtag just Aatrox things, classic, and then the Larson Shockwave to follow. That was a big team fight, the big turning point in this game. And I'm still stunned. That is the biggest change to me for Mad Lions that really blows my mind. Is Mad Lions were pretty consistently solid in the early game, mostly due to Elyoya, and shout out to Elyoya as a rookie coming up and delivering the same, if not a better performance than your regular season performance in one of your first stage appearances ever is pretty much unthinkable. Some other rookies have had similarly good performance, but it's so rare. So big shout out to Elyoya. But overall, like the mid-late game is what blows my mind. And I don't know what changed in communication, what changed in practice or preparation, but Mad were the team that I expected were to be most likely to grief it on stage, because they did it Worlds, and that was obviously, there's also 14 quarantine. They were traveling to China. Like, I think it's pretty reasonable for any team to struggle to perform with that big, massive transition when it comes to Worlds last year. But like, there was just, in the past, Mad were the team that did struggle to transition that performance, and instead they've not only performed at the level they did in regular season, they've well surpassed it to be pretty damn good mid to late game.
I think that when I looked at the whole playoffs bracket, I think the one thing that I said about Mad was, if anyone's gonna upset in this whole playoffs bracket, it's probably Mad Lions. And I think you could see that through the whole split long. Like you said, they were winning the majority of their games, but they threw them in the mid to late game. So we always said about Mad Lions, good fundamental early games is always a good structure for a team, especially with rookies. And then the fact that you have a really good early game, all you need to do is transition leads. And they just kept getting caught out. They didn't transition leads against Rogue. 5-man Shockwaves, the game's over. There was games against Misfits where they just randomly start losing when they're ahead. So Mad Lions, a lot of their losses were on them. So I feel like they've really embraced that. And like I said before, the meta read is just so good. Armut's so flexible. They really high prior Volibear. They were on the Orianna train already because Orianna's having so much success. And I think she is probably the strongest mid right now looking at playoffs. Then they had like things like Jinx Thresh. They were always rotating Alistar. And they had a good plan against Rogue. Ban out Gnar, force him to blind pick Sion, and then just counter pick top. Triple threat composition. So I think their preparation was really, really good in this series. Their play as well was really, really flawless, I feel like, barring the game 4, which I think kind of sucked, and then the loss, obviously. But I think that Mad Lions as a whole were just playing well as a team, and you could see that they were not really throwing as much.
Yeah.
They were really sticking to their guns and just playing around vision, around neutral objectives.
And of course, as much as the team play was really fantastic, also botlane really stepped up. And I think that was the other big thing, right? Because if we were going to isolate a single weak point for this team, it was probably botlane, mostly just due to the huge inconsistencies in their performance. Kaiser and Caedrel were very good last year domestically, and kind of, I mean, they griefed it in a lot of games this season, right? Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to. They griefed it. And this time,
the 2v2s were atrocious.
And Caedrel and Kaiser talked to me about this on PGL a lot, about kind of like how they've just been able to step up, and how Caedrel's much more in his comfort zone, playing things like the Jinx, playing things where the team kind of plays around him and sets him up for success. But similarly, we also just saw Kaiser be an absolute bamf. It was, kind of apparent in the Thresh game, but obviously anytime anyone pops off on Alistar, you're instantly like, that's a carry. That's the carry. That's the carry right there, officer. Over there, he's the one who's carrying this game.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I also, so one thing I kind of missed in a way is like in this series of a Mad Lions Rogue, I do feel like Rogue had the upper hand in the early game, 100%. So even though we do attribute Mad Lions as like one of the best early game teams, I really do think Rogue was winning the early games. But yeah, they stuck together. And I don't know.
Yeah, and this is what I'll say on the Rogue point. Odoamne talks so much about comms as the primary issue that I didn't really want to go into this then. But what I will say is that like you did see some scattered performances from Rogue members, is what I will say, because as good as the laning phases were, Larson had an uncharacteristically high amount of deaths, highest deaths per game in playoffs next to Blue, which is pretty surprising, given that Blue was a guy who struggled. We already talked about it a lot. So we'll see kind of how Rogue step up. That's going to be a big question to see. Obviously, following the Schalke Fnatic match, whoever they do end up playing. But I think on the side of G2. Mad said it, 50% strength is what they were talking about. They thought G2 was at 50% strength and 50% form. And so this version of Mad is very good. Hell, this version of Mad might be better than the version of G2 that we saw versus Schalke. Probably is, to be honest. That was, even in that game 5, they were preying on some balanced decisions with that Seraphine to carry them through the game.
Yeah, Seraphine was,
they did play very well to get to that stage. I don't want to take too much away from them, but Seraphine definitely saved the day. That champion doesn't exist. It might not be a win for G2. So I'm wondering, and I would love to get your thoughts on how much better do we think G2 gets into this week? Like, is this just instant Super Saiyan, or do G2 need to be like knocked down to the losers bracket before they start like try-harding for their life, being a step ahead in the meta? Because we've seen it before. G2 frequently get knocked down to the losers bracket just to instantly go Super Saiyan in the next game.
Yeah, I think the cool thing for Mad Lions at least is the G2 that we saw against Schalke is very similar to the Rogue that Mad Lions just faced. They're always blind picking Sion. They want to look for control mage mid. Azir, Caps was also playing that. But they're also down to play Lucian mid, which is exactly what Larson and Caps did as well. So I think Rogue is very similar to G2, which is good for Mad Lions in a sense. So that'll definitely help them in the best fight. But will G2 go Super Saiyan? It's a very nice way of saying it, but I think there's a high chance they do. I think I have this, for some reason, there's this gut feeling in me that tells me G2 is going to smash Mad Lions into the pavement and it's going to be a quick 3-0.
I have the exact opposite feeling.
Yeah, but then there's
like no analysis to support either one, but it's just this feeling in your gut, right?
Yeah, it's just this weird feeling that I feel like Mad Lions has like risen to the point where it's like, whoa, wait, why did we miss about Mad Lions? It's almost like they've been invisible, but now I'm like, wait, if we actually look into Mad Lions, damn, they're pretty good. What the hell is this? But I still feel like G2 is going to smash them. But then my other analytical side is telling me like, wow, Mad Lions, their drafting is so good. Their meta read is amazing. They're playing through the lane so well. Their early games, even though they've been a bit shaky, Elyoya has been, to me, the standout jungler of playoffs so far. This could go to 5 games and Mad Lions could take down G2 again. So I'm so torn between G2's going to stomp, Mad Lions going to make it 5 games and win. So I don't really know. I guess it does all come down to G2's form, because I feel like if G2 is in form, and when I say in form, I mean like not being sloppy, throwing your leads, diving tier 2, getting ace, losing Baron, and then having to try hard again, or just disrespecting your opponents, having fun, skipping bans, drifting around the rift, stuff like this, as funny as it was, and like they probably thought the series was over, and then all of a sudden they get caught off guard. As funny as it was, if they went full tryhard, I really feel like G2 would win this series. But yeah, like Mad Lions, they're already taken down Rogue, and G2 is very similar to Rogue, like I said, in the playoffs round 1 at least. And I feel like Mad Lions with the triple threat comp with Armut on these team fighters like Wukong and Urgot has really been showing up.
Absolutely has. I'm thrilled for that series.
It's so hard to predict, man. Like honestly, predicting playoffs is impossible. Like this is the first time I'm in a playoffs where it's like, so who's gonna win? And I'm like, it's so hard to say. Both teams have different strengths. The meta is so weird now.
There's too many variables. We'll find out though. We'll get formal predictions. We'll see. I believe you're on the analyst desk for that one, so we'll get to hear more of your brilliant analysis as the day goes through G2 versus Mad. Schalke versus Fnatic though is of course going to be the first best of 5 of the week, and to talk about it, we have Upset standing by. First, we're gonna talk to him a little bit about Fnatic, a little bit about him, a little bit about the team environment there, but then we will give you a look into that series, what to expect before we close out the show.
A little peek through the whole of Fnatic.
See, deep insight. That's what we're going to provide here.
Magicius. What's it, Magicius?
Magicus. Anyway, let's talk to Upset. Again, we had Odo earlier. Now we get Upset. It's a day of banger guests. Upset, welcome to the show. Normally, we would instantly kick off with talking about your match this past week, but since you already talked about it a lot on PGL, I instead want to talk about you. So, in classic generic interview fashion, how you doing? What's going on in your world? How's life?
Doing pretty good. Just scrimming, practicing, enjoying solo queue. It's a nice meta to be AD carry, I feel like. Usually there can be some more boring champs like Ashe Jhin and stuff being played, but right now you have the choice, and you can play Kai'Sa, Tristana, Xayah. So I'm loving it. Practice is fun. So yeah,
the way you said enjoying solo queue there sounded a bit sarcastic. I heard that you're doing a lot with Hylissang to get to like Diamond 1 dodging promos, because Master there's no duo queue, right?
Yes, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Dang, that's brutal. I don't know, man. I shouldn't share my thoughts because I'm uneducated on the high elo systems, but it just seems so trash to me that pro bot lanes have to can't actually duo.
Diamond 1,
You have to choose between challenger games or whatever, or duo queue.
I mean, the games are still like Grandmaster Challenger because your MMR gets inflated, but it's really bad because you never play versus duo queues, but you still are in games. You're in games where there's supposed to be no duo queues, but you're DR1, but your MMR is way higher. So,
yes. Like the people in Bronze 4 who perma dodge but have cracked MMR just so they can say they're Bronze 4 in these Diamond 1 lobbies or whatever. Oh, man.
Yes, it's basically the same.
Absolutely nightmare.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
It's actually hilarious to me though that you're one of the few AD carries I've heard say that they like this meta when there's Chem Tank Hecarim running around one-shotting people. But I respect it.
Jungle is always broken. Nothing ever will change about that, I think. So
it's probably better than a
Kha'Zix,
Kha'Zix, right?
Business as usual.
Yeah, it's actually true.
I don't even know. Hecarim is so broken, it's disgusting. 900 move speed knocks me away. 4-second fear, best ganks in the game, clear super fast. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
Nice patch.
Love it. Shout out to Mark Yeater. I don't know. I gotta learn how to pronounce your name, Mark. We're technically colleagues. Shout out to you, buddy. All right.
Yeah, shout out.
Shout out to the balance team.
Keep this.
Okay. So talking about you, a little bit less about Fnatic at first. You've had a pretty crazy path in pro play, because I think that you were super hyped coming into the league for the longest time. You had your finals appearances, and then kind of on OG everything went to shit, to just put it as simply as possible. And now you get this this chance to rebuild yourself on Fnatic, and it's going super well. Do you feel like this year did it feel to you a do or die season and a do or die year for you and kind of your reputation as an AD carry when you get put on Fnatic?
I'm trying to think very long term when it comes to my career, because I think in order to reach the goals that I have, everything needs to fit very well. It's not just about me, it's about the whole culture in the team, and everything needs to fit to win the split or to go to Worlds. And I'm just trying every day to give my best, and I don't try to think too much about my reputation or my perception in social media or the public. I just try to improve and try to help my team and do the best I can, and then hopefully it will pay off. So I don't really think of this year as it's my last chance. I think I'm still a very good player like I was before, even though after the summer split in Origin, people might have felt a little bit different. To me, it's not really what's true to me, because I see myself play every day in scrims and in solo queue, and I play so much. So I still feel very good about my play, and I'm still looking to improve and reach the success that I have set out for myself.
I think it sounds like just a very humble perspective in general, and it seems to be a mentality that, from what I've heard in interviews, is kind of shared by you and the entire Fnatic lineup. When you came on PGL, you talked a lot, and you were very there's a lot of times where a player pops off and you're like, yeah, woo, great, had a great series. But you were very insistent on I had a great series, but I had a great series because Bwipo was miserable on tank duty, tanking so much pressure. I had a great series because other people were setting me up, and you're kind of making sure to shout out all the team and everyone else who had contributed to that success. Is this a culture, and is this something about Fnatic that you think everyone shares, that they're all really willing to put aside the personal and the ego and the I don't know, the desire to carry, to let other people step up when it makes sense?
Well, it's just something that I've learned through past experiences, I would say, because you can have a great team and you go to finals or whatever, you do really well and you are the superstar, and then you're the same player, but your team isn't working out that great, and you still feel like you're the same player, but it's just not clicking, and it's very much so a team game. And the appreciating, I think, the good things that let you shine in the team, or that let you be the player you can be, is something that I learned over the years, and it's really I'm really grateful for it when it happens, because it doesn't always happen. And when your team lets you do that and helps you and facilitates you and lets you be the guy to carry a game, then you should be very grateful for it and not take it for granted and think that you're just that good, because you're not just that good. Your team has to do a lot in order to win. You don't 1v9 a game. It's not how the game works.
Yeah, you're one piece of puzzle.
Most of the time.
And how's the mood in Fnatic? Because from the outside, it looks like you guys are laughing on player cams. The content, you guys are meshing so well together. To me, it almost looks like you guys are growing into some sort of family together.
I think we got along pretty well. I think we're having a lot of fun, spending a lot of time together. But like in every team, there's always problems, of course. We all got pretty sick, and I think this put a lot of stress onto people individually, and then it created some conflict in the team, which is totally normal. But it's not like all fun and games. We are all very competitive people, and we try really hard. But overall, I would say that our team is getting along quite well, and we are having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that I think the public hasn't got as much insight into, kind of coming into this whole thing, coming into playoffs, is like how much the whole issues with Corona and with players getting sick like affected you guys. Is that something that you think is like, are you guys still feeling the ramifications of that? Do you still feel like you are maybe dragging a little bit behind because of practice time that you lost, or because of, maybe conflicts that are now popping up because of it? Like, how do you think that issue that came in week 8 is still affecting you guys now as you prepare for the second week of playoffs?
I mean, I think at this point, after winning, it felt to me more like a reset, and then we had 2 days off because no one was scrimming, because they were playing the games themselves. And I think we got like kind of a breather. But usually when you like lose a few games in a row, like we had a super week where we went 0-3, right? And people were not feeling well, and then people start doubting things and see issues, and they get amplified, and people don't have the energy to really work on them effectively, and then you lose some scrims, and then it can snowball very fast. But after we won versus SK, I think everyone got like a breather and thought like, okay, we did a lot of things well as well, and we can perform on stage when it matters in playoffs. And yesterday was the first day actually where everyone could be back in the same room and practice together. And it was a very nice feeling, and it's a really different energy, I think, being in the same room with people. I mean, of course, we were on stage together, or like practicing one guy at home, and then the reviews are really different because you're not there in person, and you can't look in the face and see how they're reacting and how they're feeling. So yeah, I think now we're on a good track again. Have some stuff to work on from SK, of course, but now it feels much more like a reset, and that we can get back to where we wanted to be.
I mean, that's fantastic to hear. On the subject of kind of outside pressure, I think it's really interesting because whenever we talk about Fnatic, we always think about like expectations on Fnatic, because no matter what Fnatic is doing, no matter which players are playing Fnatic, I feel like there's always these huge expectations on this team. And right now, you guys came in 9-9 split happened in summer 2. Fnatic obviously did much better in playoffs, able to qualify for Worlds. You guys have a 9-9 season this time. It's kind of a little bit more scraping into playoffs this time around, just because of how things have worked out. And you're now in a position where if you, let's say, drop out against Schalke, this is going to be one of the worst finishes that Fnatic has had in a long time. Like when you get on stage, when you think about pressure on stage, is that something that comes to mind at all? Like the pressure of the organization, the pressure of the expectations of fans? Or are you and the team kind of veteran enough to put that side into play without considering any of these external factors?
When I think about my teammates, I think they handle pressure very well. And for me, the most pressure that is on me is probably from myself, because the feeling of losing is very depressing and feels very terrible, and winning is quite the opposite. So, and I also don't want to perform bad ever, of course, because we play so much, right? This is all we do. So I don't even feel the extra pressure from being like in Fnatic, because myself, I don't want to allow myself to play bad or lose versus, for example, Schalke. So I don't really feel the extra pressure, and I do think my teammates handle pressure really well, even though I didn't ask them specifically if Fnatic, like being in Fnatic, pressures them extra. But for me, I feel the same. Like I don't want to lose. If I'm in Origin or if I'm in Schalke or if I'm in Fnatic, it's playing on stage feels like playing on stage to me.
Yeah, and you're up against Schalke this weekend. And I think that for me, the biggest thing in the SK series was the bot gap. I was looking at some stats. I'm not a big stats person. I don't like tunnel visioning on stats, but you had some crazy stats. You're 25 CS up at 15 on average, which I think is pretty ridiculous. How are you and Hylissang meshing so well together? Is it that you want to go aggressive with him? Because I remember Hylissang even on Twitter was saying that the only stat he cares about is how many deaths he has. He just wants to have the most deaths in the league. So he just wants to go in. How is it playing with him? Do you sometimes have to like say, okay, let's not go for this? Or do you say, okay, screw it, go in. If we die, we die. If we get a double kill, that's perfect too.
Yeah, I think it's all about commitment when you play with Hylissang. He will go for it when he thinks it's good. And you have a choice to commit or not, but if you don't commit, then at least I feel a little bit bad, like, because I'm sure he saw something there, right? He's a very good player. I think he sees situation. He sees windows of engagement or like 2v2 better than anyone I ever played with. Sometimes it backfires, of course, because there's also a lot of small things that you have to play right. Like you have to play it good, that it works. And other people will not go for it. But yeah, I think it's all about commitment with him. So when he goes for it, I try to trust him in the moment, because if you hesitate, often it will go bad. And so far, at least in laning phase, it has been working out very well. And yeah, it feels really good to play with somebody that can take the lead and find engages and just go,
Yeah. And I mean, it definitely has worked out. And it's worked out well for you too, even with Hylissang racking up deaths. You're the only 80 carry in playoffs right now with 0 deaths at 15. I know you're a stats guy, actually, Upset. We talked about it before. You keep up with the stats because when people want to come and check you and be like, well, you're not doing very in lane, you're like, check the numbers.
They don't lie.
You're like, look at my CS. Like, you're the only pro player I know who like brings up stats on their own. So you probably know these numbers already.
If you don't win a split, you need something.
Consolation prize, good stats. Yeah, you have like the highest forward percent. Fnatic has 100% first blood ratio. You guys are like super cracked in this early game. So when you think about Schalke, I honestly, like, despite the fact that Schalke got 4th through the tiebreakers, I didn't expect a lot from Schalke in playoffs. But as a spectator on the outside, I was actually pretty impressed by what they showed against G2. It really caught me off guard. What were your thoughts on on that series, Schalke versus G2? Do you feel like how much did Schalke improve from the regular season, if at all? What did you think like the big differences were for them?
I also thought they played better than I expected. I think as most people, I thought it was going to be a 3-0 from G2 because, well, it's G2 and usually they have like very good plans for best of fives and play very structured. And in a best of five, that's very valuable assets. But Schalke actually managed to break a lot of the things that G2 does well. And I was impressed by Limit and Gilius a lot, I think. And even also Broken Blade, I think, really popped off in some of these games and like actually carried, which was impressive. Getting a pentakill on Darius doesn't happen every day. So I think the strength that Schalke showed was a lot in their engages and how Limit found opportunities, how Gilius played the early game, how Broken Blade carried later on in the game. So yeah, I didn't expect the series to be that close, and I was impressed by them because I thought they were also a weaker team than what they showed.
So after seeing their performance against G2, do you see this team as a threat? Do you think they're able to match you guys? How do you think the series will play out?
I think it would be quite cocky to not see them as a threat if they nearly took down G2, right? But I do feel pretty confident that we will do well versus them. I think botlane will be a Schmurder this time around.
Schmurder. I was waiting. I can always tell when you're like, okay, I have what I'm thinking in my head, and then I have what I need to translate, so I'm not either flaming people or being too cocky. Because your speech always slows down by like 80%. You're like, I think bot lane will be okay, Schmurda. Yeah, we'll go Schmurda. Yeah, and I think that's a fair call out, right? Because everyone is talking about how fantastic Limit played in that series. He had the lowest duo procs. He literally just left lane to like go help other lanes. He was all over the map. His
engages were
But my assumption is that he doesn't really get to do that against you and Hylissang. Like, is this when you think about playing against Limit? Is it going to be like? And I don't want you to give away too much strategically here, but is this a game where you just expect it to be like, we're going to fight you so much 2v2 that you will never get to roam, you will never get to go to another lane? Or is this the matchup where you and Neon just face each other down in the farm zone bottom lane while supports are like free to just roam and you guys just play a 1v1 lane? Like, what do you actually expect in the series?
I mean, it always depends very much so on the draft plan, right? Like if you're playing certain champs, it's not easy to show the aggression as much, or depending on your jungle pathing. But I expect some 2v2 kills, and I expect a lot of fighting. Otherwise, yeah, I think we will do pretty well, and I think we will play like we usually do. So I feel pretty confident about that 2v2, but I wouldn't underestimate them. I think they showed some decent laning phases against G2 bot lane, and I think they are overall not bad players at all. But yeah, I do feel very confident in me and Hylissang taking the 2v2.
Are you guys statistically? You guys are like the murder duo, and you guys are like, I would argue, probably in terms of output, the strongest laning duo in terms of advantages built.
The murder duo
that we have. We gotta, if we don't have a buzzword, we were talking to this Odo, we have to have the narrative buzzword.
Yeah,
we need to keep it. People need to know. They need simple concept. Renekton bad, Upset Hylissang murder duo. They need simple concepts to follow. Murder duo. You're the murder duo. Do you guys think that you are the strongest 2v2 bot lane in the league? Like, if we just play isolation 2v2 tournament, is it just you two
to the death?
To the death? Is it just you two to the top every single time?
By far.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotta give some
chills. You let me know. Whenever you want to retire, we got a spot. You're just too good.
I think laning phase, we are definitely the best at creating advantages and killing people, yes. But there's a lot of things to the game, but 2v2, I do believe we're the best, yes.
Gotta bring back that 2v2 tournament.
Hell yeah. Magma Chamber, baby. What was
that? I'll see you in the Magma Chamber.
Oh my God, Magma Chamber, what a meme. Kind of as a last question to kind of wrap us up here. Is the best version of this Fnatic roster right now one that plays around you? Because that's what we saw. And you said yourself, like, Bwipo took a step back. He let you step up and carry. And I know you guys have talked about how you feel like anyone can carry. You have great players in every role. But is the best version of Fnatic at this moment one that sets you up to succeed?
I would think the best version for the team is probably when Oscar could play carry champs and carry. The meta makes this a little bit more difficult right now with the tanks. But jungle is usually king, and I think playing the meta is still a lot about farming. So I think if Oscar would perform the best from every player on the team, I think this is when we would be our strongest, or when Hylissang performs the best, because support jungle are really broken roles.
Agree. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, they are indeed broken.
Especially support. You just don't have to farm. What the hell? Every other role is like leashed to something. Supports just roam through your lane, take 3 creeps, just kill someone, and then leave. Oh, God.
Disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting. Shout out to Medic, trying to convince people otherwise.
Yeah, support.
I like it. And honestly, Upset, I feel like I give you these alley-oops where you can just give me the max ego answer, and you never do. And you miss, and I know it's deliberate. I know you're like, team. And I like it. I love the honesty. I love the development, because while I don't think, knowing you and having known you for most of your career, I don't ever think that you were like a super ego player. I think you got that reputation. And I think that it's good to have these moments. And I hope that anyone who still thinks that of you can like see past that. Because when you're like, nah, look, like, I'm great. I'm a good ass player. We're the murder duo. but at the same time, like, you can acknowledge, look, jungle supporter OP, the best version of Fnatic is one that plays through roster when the meta allows it. Like that kind of level of reflection, I think is super cool to hear.
Yeah. I also don't. I mean, yeah, I agree.
He had something on his mind there, but then he thought, I'll leave it.
It's all good. I'm gonna let this be the end of the podcast. Normally, like, we say goodbye and then we do a closeout. Predictions for this weekend from you, Upset. Let me just run me through every series, quick and dirty. Doesn't need to be anything super bold. Just give me a score and who's taking each series. First up, Schalke versus Fnatic.
I think we will take it 3-1, and then I think G2 Mad will be 5 games, I think.
Ooh.
If it's 5 games, I think G2 will win, or maybe Mad wins 3-1. I think if it's not 5 games, G2 might lose, but I see them winning in the experience, maybe like same with Schalke. They stayed so calm in game 5, even though they like threw a huge lead and they were really struggling. You could see the experience really coming in. But actually, I do think Matt is very good. I think especially their I think Kaiser had an outstanding series, and even though their bot lane struggled throughout the split, I thought Kaiser performed exceptionally well. And I always thought that their top side was very good, because even though when their bot lane had huge struggles in the split, from the outside at least, their top side was still carrying a lot of games, like Armut, Elioya, and Humanoids have been performing very well, I think. So this team is not to be underestimated, I think. So yeah, it's very close. I would probably give it to G2, but I can see an upset with Mad Lions winning. And then us versus Rogue, if we beat Schalke, I feel very good about the series as well. So
okay,
I think we will win both, and G2 will win probably.
How do you feel about narratives, or like the meme for the day? I don't know why. I don't know how it happened. It just happened. How do you feel about you taking revenge against Odoamne, your former teammate?
Oh, you really
narrative?
want to push this narrative?
No, I don't actually. I just think it's funny, and I always love looking at how pro players react to ideas like this. How do you feel about like if we just like start talking about could you guys just like Odoamne Upset, Bad Blood? You always wanted to take the farm.
There's this deep fire burning inside of me to beat Odoamne. I will
burning
swap
desire.
top and play Kalista. Yes.
Swap top and play
We
Kalista.
will be back bot with Hylissang. I will play Kalista top just for the
just for the narrative.
That's what. Yeah,
Precious CSD.
I'm telling you, you're such a homie. Let me know. You need a casting job. I'll talk to Trevor. We got you. I assume being a pro player is a better deal, but like, you let me know. Okay, thank you, Upset, so much for coming on the show. Everyone else, this has been season 7, episode 11 of EUphoria. Check the show out. We're kicking off with Schalke vs Fnatic. Caedrel and I will be casting, and you can tune in at the normal time. Twitch.tv/LEC. See you there.